Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I am your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a doctor and 37-year practitioner of the yogic lifestyle and the ancient healing arts. He studied yogic healing directly with Yogi Bhajan, master of Kundalini yoga, for over 24 years. In addition, he has constantly been studying and incorporating the top holistic therapies and routines that are revolutionizing the future of healthcare on this planet. Welcome to the show, Dr. Har Hari Khalsa.
Thank you, Matt. Brother? Doing great. Doing really good.
Amazing, man. Well, it's nice to see you again. We met at a beautiful space in LA, and I started to look into a little bit of your work and what you're up to, and I was like, oh my goodness, man, I got to get this guy on the podcast. I got to ask him about all these technologies on the website and everything you've done. Do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself first, and then we'll just dive in some of the exciting stuff you're working on?
Well, I'm a chiropractor. I've been a chiropractor for about 30 years. And I started in Kundalini yoga when I was 20. I was actually kind of more going towards medicine at that time. That was my kind of drive. I was interested in actually biomechanical engineering. I worked for a company when I was 16 that made heart valves. And I wanted to go into that field, and I ended up having an injury, several injuries when I was 19 and 20. I had a car accident, ski accident, all these different physical things started happening to me, and I ended up being in chronic pain. And I'd never experienced pain my whole life. I never had pain. I didn't know what pain was even, other than, your typical things, But I was starting to have back pain, and I went to a medical doctor for about a year. I was going to physical therapy, and nothing really was helping. I was just like, this is. I knew I needed to do something, and I didn't really have a clue what I needed to do. And so I ended up in a Kundalini yoga class in the University of Oregon, Eugene. And they told me, I told the teacher, I said, I'm having back pain. What should I do? And he's like, go to a chiropractor. And he gave me the name of a chiropractor. I didn't even know what chiropractors were at that point, because I grew up in Southern California. Chiropractic was pretty much unknown where I was, unless you knew somebody, but it wasn't culturally, it wasn't a known thing at that time. So I went to the chiropractor, and just from the first moment I met this guy, I was like, wow, this guy is amazing. I didn't even know what he did. He didn't even work on me. It was just the energy of what he was doing. And I knew right then, I was like, I want to be a chiropractor, because the medicine wasn't working. It just wasn't working for me. And, so that was kind of my introduction to the whole idea of healing and chiropractic and homeopathy and naturopathic and, all these things that I'm into right now. So that was kind of the intro. And then I also was at the same time getting pretty heavily involved with Kundalini yoga. This was in 1980. And I met Yogi Bhajan, I think, around that time. And I was just like, oh my God, when I met this man, I didn't really even understand who he was at that point when I first met him. And I didn't have any experience really in the realm of spirituality or energy. I was just a normal kid, normal guy, who liked to go and party and have fun and whatever, And so I was at this, at the yoga center they have in LA, and I was sitting outdoors, and they do it like a what's called a gurdwara. It's like a weekly, what do you call it? Like a church service, kind of, for Sikhs, right? Because Yogi Bhajan was a Sikh. And I was sitting outdoors, and I'm just sitting there kind of like minding my own business, and all of a sudden my whole body starts shaking, and I don't even know why. I thought it was like an earthquake or something. I didn't know what was going on. And then, like, about 2 seconds later, Yogi Bhajan comes walking out the door, and I'm like, oh my God, it was his energy field. His energy field was so strong that it literally was causing my body to shake. And I was like, oh my God, what the hell? Who is this guy? So I got really kind of like, let's say, hypnotized, I guess is the best word, hypnotized by this guy, by his power, his power. He was very powerful, energy wise. And so I started studying with him, doing yoga, meditating, breathing, pranayama, and really getting into it. I ended up moving in an ashram in Boulder, Colorado, uh, and got into the Kundalini lifestyle, getting up early, 3:30 in the morning, doing yoga, sadhana, and living in literally living in a commune. It was just a group of yogis living together in a house, and we all lived together and contributed, and it was magical. It was amazing. It was like heaven on earth. Like, just can you imagine? Just everyone's working for each other, and that was kind of the idea. It was like, Yogi Bhajan had a saying: "Life is you're not supposed to live at each other, but live for each other." So that's kind of the idea of living in an ashram back then. And so that was kind of my launching pad into this spiritual uh, practice of Kundalini yoga, which I've been doing pretty much since then. So it's about 37 years I've been into Kundalini doing it. And it's like a staple. It's a grounding thing I always go back to. I have a sadhana I still do to this day, that keeps me grounded. It keeps me in my center spiritually, and keeps me in that elevated place. And so that's kind of my background. And I eventually, went to chiropractic school, and ended up moving to Los Angeles, where Yogi Bhajan lived. And so I started a practice back then. That was 1985. Ended up getting married, having a family, having a big practice, doing chiropractic. But my real passion is healing. And chiropractic is part of healing, but there's a whole universe of healing out there that we know about now. That's quantum healing, working with subtle energy, working with homeopathic, herbal, herbs, nutraceuticals. There's so much coming out now that it's like unbelievable, the knowledge and the expansion of what do you call it, the healing world. The healing world that we're moving into right now is unbelievable. I mean, we literally are on the precipice, I think, with humanity, of literally totally revolutionizing how medicine and how life is carried on this planet. Because up until this point, the powers that were, we like to call them the powers that were instead of the powers that be, right? Powers that were, the drug companies and the banks and the multinational corporations that have been polluting and destroying the planet for the last 100 years. Their time is over. It's over, because the internet, like this show, it's open. The cat's out of the bag. The knowledge of the ancient healing practices and the power of how we can heal ourselves. It's coming out, and it's not. When I first got into it, it was virtually unknown, and I was kind of like, I guess, a pioneer. But for me, it was just all about my own self healing and self evolution, I didn't really care about money and trying to fit into the fucking society. Sorry, I said an F word there, but I just was like, literally, F you. I don't want your shit. It doesn't work. Your shit doesn't work. That's why I got into what I do, because I'm looking for what works, and medicine doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It works in certain ways, but in most of it, it doesn't work. It's useless. It's counterproductive. And I see these patients who they suffer, and they're being tortured, maimed, killed, burned, cut, every kind of inhumane thing you can think of. That's what medicine does to people, and it's like, are you kidding me? And then when you talk to people, well, my medical doctor told me to do this. I'm like, yeah, but don't you respect your body? Why would you put a chemical that's going to, harm you? Because all it's doing is harming you. It's not helping you in any way, shape, or form. Any of these chemicals that they give people for all these diseases, they're poison. Bottom line. So, my quest and my mission has been just, seeking what is the cutting edge out there that can help heal us naturally in harmony with nature, and what our true nature is, which is we are part of nature, and that's why recently I started studying with Wim Hof. Do you know who Wim Hof is? This guy,
Yeah.
They call him the X-Man. I love this guy because he embodies the principle of nature as healing, and to the most like rudimentary elements of nature, cold, being exposed to cold, being outdoors in nature, exposing our body like wild animals. I mean, we're humans are animals. We're no different than the lion, the tiger, the bear, the dog, the cat. We're part of nature, and we've separated ourselves artificially and tried to make ourselves separate from nature and protect ourselves from nature. And that's our downfall. As humans, we need to be part of nature and integrate with nature. And that's what he's teaching. What Wim Hof is teaching is, it's the most basic thing that humans need to learn, is how to be in nature and be self-sustaining. The original indigenous people, that's how they lived. They lived in loincloths, and they could go in the winter in a loincloth and be fine. The pictures of the Indians, the original Indians from the time of the Puritans, the first Thanksgiving, the Indians came, they brought the food and whatever they brought, and they were wearing loincloths, and it was winter. It was cold. That's how humans were made. That's how we're designed, to withstand and tolerate and actually thrive in cold. And cold is also a healing force. One of the first principles of Kundalini yoga actually is cold, using cold showers every morning. And so that was something I started back way back then, 1980. Yogi Bhajan, his first teaching of Kundalini yoga was cold showers. And he said that, I remember a quote from Yogi Bhajan from way back then. He said that cold water, they call it in yoga, they call it Ishnan. And that's the word in the Ori Vedic tradition. Ishnan, he said, was 1,000 times stronger than any therapy on this planet. 1,000 times stronger. Back then, he said it. And I always remembered it, and it was always a part of my life. I always did cold all the time, every morning, cold showers. And but Wim Hof, what he's done, he's taken this idea of cold and brought it to the, like, I guess, like the pinnacle, you'd say, of what is possible. What can you heal with cold? I mean, with exposure, cold exposure, and pranayama, breathing, using your breath to oxygenate your body. I've seen in my own body, this is what I'm passionate about now, is that I really believe with this technology that's coming out with Wim Hof right now, that we as humans have the capacity, if we so choose. It's a choice. You have to choose to do it. But if you choose to do it, you can anti-age your body back to the time of your teenage years or early 20s. I'm 57. Before I started intensively doing the Wim Hof method, I was in chronic pain. I was developing arthritis in my hip. I was doing all the therapies I knew to do to help relieve the pain, but nothing cured it. I mean, cured it where I literally have a new body. I have a body of a 25-year-old now, and I'm 57. And I think that applies to Wim, too. If you look at Wim and his capacity and you really study what he can do with his own body, he's 57. He's the same age as me. And he's doing things that probably 20-year-olds couldn't do. I mean, he's doing peacock pose on one hand, on one arm. That's, I couldn't do that in my 20s. I'm doing it now. He inspired me to do the peacock pose on one arm. That's quite a feat, and it feels really, really good to do it. Just getting up on one arm, you're like this. I don't know if I have a way to show a picture, but is there a way I can show a picture from my thing?
I don't know how you do it from the phone, but I'll make sure that in the comments we'll link to one doing it. We'll get like a nice high def and glorious.
I have a picture of me doing it. The first time I did it was about a month ago, and I'd seen Wim doing it. If you ever watch any of his documentaries, like the Vice documentary, have you seen the Vice documentary that he did?
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. So the picture of him is he's on top of the mountain in a peacock pose on one arm. And I was like, damn, I want to do that, I put that on my bucket list. I want to do that. And I started, and the thing about the cold, like, because I'm doing the cold now every day, I have a freezer. I get into 32-degree water. And when you come out of the water, your body and your soul and your energy is so intense. It's hard to explain. I'm still recovering. It usually takes me about an hour after I get out, where I'm, I have to do some intense yoga, very intense yoga. And so I get in the peacock pose. I do horse stance. I do, these headstand. I do some really intense yoga to just channel the energy of the cold, because the cold is like a healing force. Wim says it's a merciless and righteous force of healing, and it goes through your being, and it literally regenerates everything. It totally regenerates your whole system on a quantum level, not just physical, but on a quantum level. It's recharging the DNA, the quantum mechanics of your molecules in your body. It's like, it's charging it. Another guy that inspired me to get into this whole thing was Jack Cruz. Do you know who that is? Dr. Jack Cruz?
Not familiar with him.
Okay. That's one guy you should interview, because and I think you could interview him. He does podcasts like this. But anyway, his story, he was a neurosurgeon, Okay, he still is. He's a practicing neurosurgeon, uh, extremely intelligent guy, a genius. Okay, and what happened though is he never was very physical, and he became grossly obese. He was like I think it was 375 pounds. This guy. This is a few years back. And what happened is he stood up to give a lecture in front of other doctors. He lectured to other doctors, and he stood up, and just the weight of his body crushed his kneecaps. The what do you call it? Not kneecaps. The meniscus. Both his meniscuses were crushed and completely devastated. Like he could not walk. He was disabled. Okay, so pretty much at that point in his life, he knew something had to change. Like that was the wake up call. You know, when that happened, he knew he had to change. And somebody in the audience was involved with holistic health and healing and spirituality. And this guy was a straight up medical Western doctor with no experience at all in healing. And this person said, "Hey, I know you're in a lot of pain. You need to check out this information about healing." You know, and I don't remember the references exactly, but basically it was about learning about Zen, Buddhism, and overcoming and transcending the physical. Okay, so he started studying in the medical library because he quickly understood that the answers did not lie in medicine. Medicine did not have the answers for what he needed to heal himself. And so he started studying physics quantum physics, even at a very deep level, to understand how the body works at that level, not the biochemical level, not the biologic level, but at the quantum level, at the physics, where physics is actually in play. Okay, which is a whole other science, separate from what normal medical people get trained in. Most medicine is trained in biochemistry, not in physics. Okay, so he went and started studying physics and how it related to our cells and our DNA and the mitochondria. And it took him about 18 months of studying very intensely in all the best, university libraries. Studied for 18 months, constant research. And then what happened is he went to Italy, and he was standing below the statue of David in Florence. Have you ever been? You know that the statue, that big statue, famous statue of David, right? He's standing underneath the statue, and a beam of light came through the window and it hit him in the forehead, like boom, and he got awakened. There, like boom, oh, I got it, he fucking got it. It's like I know what to do. And so he got he got an instant download of what he needed to do to heal himself. And it consisted of mainly four things that were key. And it all had to do with physics, which he had been studying it. He just didn't know how to apply it. So when he got the download, it was he needed to do cold exposure, number one. He needed to be exposed to sun, number two. He needed to have massive amounts of omega-3 fatty acid, number three. And number four, he needed to sleep on a high magnetic field bed, a bed that has magnets to increase the magnetic energy. Okay, so those four things, those principles of physics, he applied them to his body as an experiment. Okay, without exercise or without dieting, he did those four things: cold exposure, sun exposure, omega-3s, and magnetic energy. Okay, four things. He did it for a year. In 1 year, he lost, I think he said it was 175 pounds. He lost 175 pounds in 1 year doing that. Totally healed his body. And then he, started teaching his clients, his patients, how to do this kind of thing. Okay. and he wrote a book. It's called the paleo. No, I'm trying to think something. Epipaleo. So epi means above, paleo. Paleo is, the earth diet, the diet of the original humans. So basically, he took the idea of paleo and then added or went above it by introducing these concepts. Okay. And I think the key concept dietarily is omega 3s, which means a lot of seafood. If you're eating fish, or if you're a vegan, it means you have to get omega 3s through like the algae. But the main thing is you have to have omega 3s. That's really important for the brain function, for mitochondrial function too. The omega 3 is the key to the whole functioning of the mitochondria in our body. So, and pretty much all the sources that I've seen since learning that from him, are saying the same thing. For anti-aging, for healing, omega 3s are extremely important. So that was a big piece of it. But anyway, I that's where I first kind of was exposed to the idea of doing ice baths versus just a cold shower, because his idea was in physics, when you cool a system, you increase the electromagnetic energy in the system. So that's the whole idea, is that when you cool it down, it increases magnetic energy. And when you increase magnetic energy, you increase the flow of electrical energy, which is the nerves and the functioning of the body. So that was the principle. And then, then I got exposed to Wim, or I heard about Wim Hof, and slowly started getting closer and closer to him and his teachings. At first, all I knew is he was the Iceman and he did things. I didn't really understand his whole thing. But I guess back in January, I decided, okay, I want to start doing this cold exposure thing daily. I've done it every day now since January. I started in January of 2016. And in those 10 months since I've started, I can truly say I have anti-aged my body 25 years. So I literally feel, so I'm 57, I feel like I'm maybe 28, something like that, in my physical body, in my capacity to do things, to deal with stress, whatever. I mean, I can do things now that I couldn't do back when I was 30 and I'm 57. So I really am a big proponent of Jack Cruz and Wim Hof. I mean, those two guys I think are the leading edge in healing, self-healing. That's the key thing here, is that people on this planet need to learn how to heal themselves, because nobody else is going to heal you. The only person that can heal you is you. I mean, I've studied with every healer, every kind of guru, yogi, this, that, there's out there, and they're all great, but the same message comes back. You have to do it yourself. You have to be your own healer, and you have to do your own kind of experiments on yourself to see what works for you. And everybody's different, I can't say that what I'm doing for me is going to work for every human, but I think the vast majority of people are going to get huge benefit from learning this stuff and applying it. And I know already, I've already seen it with a lot of my patients and family who I'm teaching how to do this. One of my daughters, I have 3 kids, and one of my daughters, well, actually 2 of my daughters are fucked up, but then the older one I can't help right now because it doesn't have a place to put it. But the younger daughter, I bought her a freezer. She was in chronic pain, and she's only 23 years old. And I felt, oh my God, I felt so bad for her, And and there was no way she was getting help from anybody. And I said, listen, you got to do this yourself. And so I bought her the freezer, set it up in her house, and she's already feeling 80% better. She's not 100% cured, but she feels way better. She's happy because she now knows that she has the power to heal herself. That's critical. When you have that knowledge, you can heal yourself. You can still have the pain or infirmity or whatever your symptom is, but in your own heart, in your own mind, I can overcome this. And because the power that the cold gives you, it wakes you up. It literally wakes you up, so you know that you can heal. And I've seen that with already tons of people that I've been working with, and also people that are associated with Wim Hof. A lot of people have reversed or greatly, let's say, improved serious conditions, autoimmune, chronic, what do you call it, colitis, ulcerative colitis, rheumatoid arthritis, cancers, you name it. All of these conditions have either greatly improved or completely been resolved using the Wim Hof method. And that's just breathing and cold exposure. That's it.
Wow.
So
wow, man. Well, you started off with a bang, brother. You gave me a lot to chew on. So great. What I love the main message being is being able to heal ourselves, and that's something that I totally believe in. And I did Dr. Joe Dispenza's progressive and 5-day advanced, and he goes into the science of how you can heal yourself through meditation, and he's studying the neurology of it. And some of his patients or students have these spontaneous healings where their brain will emit a signal and go to like over 1 million microvolts, and before that it's 10 to 60 microvolts. And so he is suggesting, and I'm sure Yogi Bhajan suggesting, that you can heal your own body through thought. There's another yogi who healed himself. I can't remember. He's a really popular one, but he fractured his leg and he did it through meditation, and he has a TED Talk on it. I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. But so you've got the mind element, you've got the cold exposure element, which is connecting to you as a piece of nature and using nature. And then now we have these futuristic technologies like magnetism, because we're using science in the way that it's let's say amplifying nature, amplifying what we need. So I guess the question that I want to ask is, what are some fundamentals from all of your research that we can do to apply to optimize our health now, as far as mindset and understanding goes, and everything you've learned from the yogi Kundalini traditions, and possibly futuristic technologies that we can, if someone's listening is like, I want to amp up my health, I want to get rid of this chronic pain. For me, I'm always looking for, how do I just increase this energy field? Because thankfully, through what I've learned, I've always felt great. And when I am a little bit ill, it's so weird for me to feel that pain. I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. So I have such compassion for people who experience that daily, if there is a way out. So I guess just maybe some fundamental principles to optimize our health.
Well, I mean, the thing is, number one is you got to eat right. I mean, food is, I think, it's important. It's very important. And knowledge of what you're eating and understanding how it's affecting your body. You are what you eat, and, just to summarize it down to the most essence is, eat just like you live in nature, eat nature. Everything should be nature. We should be part of nature. Our food should be part of nature. If your food is not real, if it's not literally, if your food is not, if you don't understand the words that are on the label of the food you're eating, that's not food. You should be eating whole foods that are grown in the ground, or raised in the sea, or come off a tree, or that's the key. Because if you don't have the foundation of nutrition, I'm sorry, you're not going to make it. You gotta have that. That's number one. In chiropractic, they talk about three things. It's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Or no, biochemical. I'm sorry. Biochemistry, which is all the foods and toxins. It's the good and bad. You got biochemistry, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and then you got your physical. You got three things you got you have to balance and regulate and work on those three things. Your physical, you need to work on. Your mental, emotional, you have to work on. And your food, your supplements, your minerals, your diet. So those three things, if they're in balance, you're going to be healthy. Or if you go out of health, at least you know that's the triangle. The what do they call it? The Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. My what do you call it? Ayahuasca shaman. I started doing. Oh, that's another thing we should talk about is ayahuasca. That's interesting. But anyway, he had a really interesting story, and he was saying in the Bible that what we think of as the Trinity, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, it's actually the Father, the Mother, and the Child. That's the Trinity. Is the Father, the Mother, and the Child. And those are all within us too. So it's the unit itself, but it's also within yourself. So everything comes down to that Trinity. And so you can look at it as biochemistry, mental, emotional, physical. It's a trinity. It's a trinity. So that's an important concept for people to understand, because that's the foundation. You got to have a foundation, for things to grow. When I met Yogi Bhajan for the first time, and he gave me my name, he said, what did he say? Oh, everyone around was saying, what does that name mean? Har Hari, And they're like, it means God. Hud is God, and Hari is God, the female God. Hud is the male God. And he said, no. He said, no, it means Shishmana. Shishmana. Do you know what Shishmana is? Have you heard of that in Kundalini? Shishmana is the energy that runs up the spine, the Kundalini energy. Okay. So there's Ida and Pingala. Ida is the female, and Pingala is the male. It's the positive, negative charge that run up the spine, like two snakes, like this, right? In the medical field, they have the snake, that symbol with the snakes. That's the Kundalini. Okay, so in Kundalini yoga, the Ida and Pingala run like DNA strand up the spine, and in the center of that strand is Shishmana, which is the force, the Kundalini, the force, the rising force that helps you grow physically, emotionally, spiritually. So he told me that's what my name means is that Shishmana. And he said, meditate on it and find out what it means. That's how you really know, is meditate. Okay. So it all gets back to meditating. Meditating is another foundation. Okay. And that's part of sadhana. Okay. Sadhana means spiritual discipline. It means doing a practice every day, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Right now, my main practice is Wim Hof, because he's the man. Like, to me, Wim Hof is the new Yogi Bhajan. To be honest, I love Wim Hof. I want to go and study with that guy as much as I possibly can, because he has taken himself, his consciousness, his physical body, to a level that I've never seen in any human at least at this epic. Maybe there's other epics with other humans that were able to do what he could do, but he's pretty badass, that guy. I mean, I feel compelled to say this because I love Wim Hof, and I do want to challenge his records. No one's challenged his records. He has 26 world records doing feats in cold, and I feel like I really want to try to at least challenge one of them. One. And you know what I mean? Like, the one I want to challenge, which I don't know. I think either I'll die trying it or I will succeed, but it will be very, very difficult, because he did something that is not very possible. He swam 100 meters under the Arctic ice. That's I mean, if you can even do that in a swimming pool, you're a fucking badass. He's doing it in the Arctic ice. What the fuck? So, I mean, Yeah, I'm working on it. I mean, he can hold his breath. I think I heard someone say he can hold his breath retention out for 6 minutes. I mean, there's people apparently who can do a lot longer than that. I didn't realize that, but these deep sea diver guys who go down hundreds of feet, they can hold their breath for like 9, 10 minutes. I heard one guy said he could do it for 24 minutes. I don't know. I have to look and see what the actual record is on that. But that's a process, an ongoing process that I'm working on is the retention. Right now, I can do like 2.5 minutes, which is that's pretty long, but for me, I mean, I want to get to that at least 4 minute mark, but that means blasting through quite a bit of residual fear, I think, to get to that level. But that's a very interesting process. Have you done any of that Wim Hof breathing? Are you familiar with it?
Yeah, I actually I camped with his son at Burning Man, not this year, but last year. Really, really great guy, and he's super hilarious. But yeah, I've done some work with that.
Oh, cool. You know what? It's funny that you're telling me that. I know I've been talking to him about setting up a Wim Hof Center in LA. I've been communicating with him. So that's interesting that you met him.
Oh yeah.
Really cool.
He was his first burn, so he was part of part of our camp. He's a really great guy. He ended up doing a workshop, and just like his dad, he's very humble. He's doing these things that this isn't possible. People think, for me, what I've always enjoyed is finding the superheroes and seeing if it's possible. So for me, it was the Shaolin Kung Fu monks in China that can break stone. I think what Wim Hof is doing is extraordinary. Being a martial artist, I want to break some stuff. You know what I mean? That's how do I learn from them, and it's absolutely extraordinary. And it comes down to, like you said, their fundamentals. Number one is extraordinary dedication. Number two, you have to be able to, there's a meditation practice. And three, harnessing the energy of the body. And four, breath. It all comes back to those fundamentals. So, these superheroes exist, and Wim Hof is popularizing that and saying, again, you can do this too. Everybody has this ability. I'm not some sort of super guy that I'm the only one who can do it. You can do it, and that's putting the onus back on you for your own health, your own well-being, because we're kind of conditioned to put it outside of our health, outside of ourselves. And it is so simple. I love how you touched on the diet, because it is really, really simple. So, I also know that looking at your websites, and you're doing retreats and cleanses, and you're also into these futuristic technologies, which I am as well. When you're talking about the magnetic bed, my friend Jason Stiles, who I connected you to, I got to get his podcast up, but from ipyramids.net, and he fell out of a helicopter being basically a military pararescue, broke both his legs, compressed his spine, was in terrible pain, and wasn't getting better. And so he started looking up alternative health, and it was magnetism through pyramid technology, built this gnarly pyramid that, I invite you guys to check it out, because it's nuts. And he's just basically combined pyramid technology, vibrational technology, magnetic field technology, and creates a charge spin density through hertz, because there's the waves, so they get infused through the pyramid structure. And he healed his body just by sleeping in that thing. So like you suggested with the magnetism, are there any supplements that you say, you should have, or practices that you should have? So as far as physical, it seems like meditation is a must. I'm just curious if there's any Kundalini practices. Cold is a must. You could start with cold showers. And maybe supplements, or any technologies that are affordable, because I know some of them are crazy. Jason has some affordable ones, but some of them are pretty expensive. But you should definitely get them if you can afford them. So, just curious what your thoughts are.
Range of the things, as far as technology is concerned, the Russians did the most research on technology for healing that I know of. They actually incorporated it into their space program, because they quickly found out that when humans started going into outer space for long periods of time, that the body would start to fall apart, literally, because our bodies evolved in a magnetic field. So if we don't have that magnetic field for a long period of time, our body starts to disintegrate and fall apart. Our bones degenerate, our muscles atrophy, our bodies just start to wither away without the magnetic field. And magnetic field is considered to be the fourth element of food, actually. It's actually considered a nutrient. Okay, so it's extremely important that we get that on a regular, consistent basis. I personally, the cheapest thing I think you can do is sleep grounded. Are you familiar with grounding technology?
Grounding technology, as in just being on the ground.
It's a whole technology. In fact, I'll even show it to you. I have it here on my bed. I'll show you my little laboratory. This is my laboratory. I'm in it right now. This is my,
Nice.
see that thing? See this thing, that baby? This is a
Yep.
Russian thing. We'll talk about that later. That's called a vertebrae. This is based on Russian research. That's really, really interesting. But I want to show you this. Okay, so underneath my bed, there's this black thing. Okay, it's a little fucked up right now, but okay. So it says ground therapy. You see that? Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so ground therapy. See, underneath there's a plug. See the plug, and then that
Yep.
plug goes in here into the ground. See the third thing here is the ground on the plug. Okay, so that means I'm electrically grounded even through my sheet. Okay, so this material transmits negative ions through the sheet. So even though the sheet's there, I'm still getting grounded electrically to the earth. Okay, so that's why it's important to walk barefooted, to go outside in nature, be barefooted or lay on the sand or dirt with your skin contacting the earth. Okay,
Are you
so
yeah,
grounding.
are you familiar with Dan Winter? Sorry to cut you off.
The name sounds familiar. Is he a grounding guy?
Yeah, he's a physicist. He studied with Buckminster Fuller as well, and he talks about the elements of health. And he goes on he has so many YouTube videos that are so in depth as far as physics goes. And at the end of the day, what he recommends is clean food, clean water, sunlight, and basically energy from the earth, like grounding. Oh, and loose clothes. He says loose clothes so your auric field can build. So same idea.
So the grounding is a really amazing technology. I found out about 8 years ago. Sleeping grounded, you get a much better, higher quality of sleep. You're getting negative ions in your body the whole night while you're sleeping, and you're connected with the magnetic field of the earth. That's one way. That's the cheapest way too, by the way. That's only like less than $100 for one of those grounding sheets. So it's pretty reasonable.
The website.
So
So what's do you know
I
the
don't,
website or how they found it?
just Google it. It's a ground therapy. It says right there, ground therapy, and it's like a black material, high tech, very conductive. It conducts negative ions. So people can just
Nice.
go on that website and check it out. I think you could
I'll
probably
find it.
get it on Amazon or something like that. So that's a very, very easy, practical way to do it, because you don't have to go to a therapist. You don't have to even do anything. You're just going to sleep and you're sleeping. Also, I think what Jack Cruz used was it's called Magnetico. Magnetico is a company that makes magnetic beds. I talked to the inventor recently, and that guy, I think, his name is Dean Bonley. You can check him out. Check out his stuff. But that's a very practical approach. It's a little more expensive. His mats are about $1,000, something like that. But if somebody's got a chronic illness, that's a good investment, I would say, a magnetic bed. And then as far as other practical things, this little thing here is pretty nice. You can You see that? Hello?
Hey, you just cut out for a second there. So I can't see anything. There we go. We're back in the game. We're back in the game.
So this pen here, you see this pen?
Yeah.
You see this? Okay. So you know what? While I'm talking, I'm going to hook up my phone so I don't have to worry about the power because I've got a power cord here. So I'm going to get this thing hooked up because I'm down to 32%. Um, so anyway, this pen that I was just showing you, it's called an anion emitter. Okay, it's a negative ion emitter. Again, negative ions. This produces 10,000 negative ions per second. It works with. Can you see it?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, can you share with everybody why negative ions are important, why that's a benefit?
Oh, yeah. Negative ions are basically nature's form of healing. It's antioxidant therapy. It's what helps reduce the effects of oxidative stress on the body, which causes inflammation, which causes pain, which causes genetic, telomere shortening and aging. All of our diseases are because of inflammation and oxidative stress. So anything that produces negative ions or increases negative ions into your body is going to help heal. It's going to help reduce inflammation. So this pen actually emits negative ions, which is quite remarkable. It has magnets, zeolite. It has, I think, different crystals, and it's some kind of technology that they've developed. It really works. I mean, I've had some pretty amazing results with this pen. I have there was a story. I'll tell this story. This is a crazy story, man. I was on a plane. I was on a plane coming back from Mexico City. Half hour into the flight, the stewardess comes on the PA and she says, "We need a medical professional. There's someone going into cardiac arrest on the plane." I'm like, "What the fuck?" And my wife's like, "Push the button." And I'm like, "What am I going to do? I'm a fucking chiropractor, you know?" Like, I mean, I've heard of stories where chiropractors like adjust somebody and they heal them, but I'm like, I don't want the liability. I was like, no. I'm not going to touch that guy. But then I thought, oh, wait a minute. I had this. And I found it took me about 5 minutes to figure out where I put it. I didn't even know where it was. And it was in my backpack. And I pulled it out and I told the stewardess, I said, I think maybe this thing will help the guy, because they just didn't have any way to treat this guy. He was literally on the verge of dying. He was in tachycardia. His heartbeat was over 200 beats per minute. His eyes were rolling up in his head. He was jerking out. He was like losing it. And so I went back and I sat with a guy and I just started wanding him because this thing works through. You can do it at a distance. So I was doing it like a few inches away from his heart, he was like hunched over, and I was just doing it over his back, like in the area of his heart. And it took like about 8 minutes, and the guy, he just calmed down. He got calmer and calmer and calmer. And like after 8 minutes, he sat up and he's like, "Man, what did you just do? I feel totally fine." It totally balanced him out because his heart was he had taken I think he had drinking 6 espressos before he got on the plane. So he was way jacked up with way too much caffeine, and it was causing his heart to go into like what do you call it, tachycardia. And this calmed it down because it reduced the inflammation and everything just calmed down. Boom, like that. Boom, it worked. I mean, with a heart attack victim. I mean, I'm not going to say it works with every heart. Who knows? But this one guy, it freaking worked. But this also,
but
that's just an example. This is called an anion emitter, and I can give you the website or whatever after at the end of the show.
Yeah, I think people are going to be curious about that. Anion emitter. Does it have a name?
Yeah, it's called an anion emitter. That's what the name of it is.
Okay.
But the thing about it is that the real thing about this though is that it's something you can wear on your body. Like you can put it on your shirt. You just, like it's like a little pen thing, so you can clip it to your shirt. And when you wear it during the day, it protects you from stress. It keeps your inflammation levels down. It's they say this is like standing in front of a waterfall for like 5 hours or something. It gives out the same amount of negative ions that a waterfall gives off. Just holding it in your hand or carrying it on your body. So this is something I keep with me 24/7. I sleep with it underneath my mattress or underneath my pillow, actually. Um, this thing I think has really helped me a lot. I felt like it's really helped balance out my body quite a bit, and it's not that expensive. It's only about $200 or something for this thing. So this is a very practical tool. So now I'll tell you about the Russians. I'm half Russian actually, from my genetics. My grandparents came from Russia and from Eastern Europe, so I have that DNA. I think that the Russian people are some of the most hardy people on the planet. That and oops, sorry. Are we there? Shit. Uh oh. Did I fucking?
Yeah,
Are you there?
I can hear. I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. I just can't see you.
I hit something. Totally. Hold on. I gotta get back on here. Hold on. Here we go. Here we go. Oh my God. Me here. Are you there? Let's see. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. You there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, brother. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So the Russians created this thing. Can you see it?
Yeah. But I don't know what I'm looking at, but I can see it. It looks like a remote control.
It is a remote control. This is the working head of it right there. That's the electrode. This thing is called a Dinos. It's made by a company called Dinos. It's a Russian company. See that on there? I don't know if you can see it. Anyway,
Yep.
but anyway,
Yep.
so what the Dinos is I'll turn it on so you can see it when it comes on. It comes on, and then let's see. It brings up a whole menu of things. But the bottom line is, on this technology, the Russians developed this for their space program. Okay, we were talking about magnetics, and we're going to talk more about magnetics too. But I wanted to talk about this because this little tool is a lifesaver. I mean, this thing can do so many healing things for people. I love this thing. I mean, I use it almost daily with my patients because so basically what's this technology came out of is, are you there? Because I can't see you.
Yeah, I'm here. I just you
Hello?
keep going in and out visually. Yeah, I can hear you.
I think it's the internet. I think it's the internet because it says low bandwidth mode enabled. Swipe down to switch. Okay. Swipe
Yeah,
down. Okay, there we go.
it'll probably just stop the video when your bandwidth is low. Oh, there you go.
Okay, so I'm
Look at
back
that.
again. Okay, yeah. So anyway, so what I was saying on this technology, they developed this in the 70s for their space program, and the reason they developed it is because in outer space, Western meds don't work. They have a horrible effect on the body, much worse than on Earth. It's like the negative side effects get amplified like 10 times in outer space. So they needed to come up with something that was natural for outer space. So that's what this is. Okay, so the idea was they wanted to have a system that they could apply to the body that helped the body heal itself by stimulating the nervous system and the brain. Okay, so what this device does, when you put it on the body, it communicates with your nerves directly. The waveform that it creates is the same waveform as the firing nerve. Okay, so it looks like almost like a sawtooth, like a shoot, like this. Okay, and then most electrical devices they have like H wave or an S wave, but this device does a spike, which is exactly mimics how the nerves communicate or how they discharge, through the nervous system. Okay. So the idea was if you could amplify the signaling of the nervous system to communicate with the brain, you could stimulate the brain in such a way to heal the body. Okay. So this is like a biofeedback device that stimulates the nerves, but it's actually communicating with the brain to get the brain to produce neuropeptides, which are healing molecules that our brain produces for healing the body. Okay, so it's flooding the body with these neuropeptides, which turn healing on whatever is going on with the body. It could be a musculoskeletal, it could be immune, it could be organ system, it could be anything emotional. Somebody's fucked up emotionally, whatever. This thing just balances the body. It feels like needles. Okay, so the idea of this device also, it's a form of electroacupuncture. So when you put it on the body is getting like needles. Literally, it feels like 1,000 needles are going into the body, stimulating the nerve. But it's not just like a needle; it's actually electrical stimulation that goes right to the brain. And so this technology is used in hospitals, actually, in Russia. They have whole hospitals that the only therapy is this. They did studies back in the 80s with this technology where they treated tens of thousands of people in Russia. And their success rate across the board with all disease was 88%. I think 88.5%. All disease were ameliorated, were treated and successfully better. And we're talking even things like internal organ diseases, okay, kidney function, liver function, heart function, you name it, gynecological, all of it, digestive, all of it, 88.5% cure rate, okay. On musculoskeletal, it was even higher. It was like in the 90s, 90% something, 93%, I think. I've had cases that were scheduled for surgery. People scheduled for disc laminectomies who use this technology, and only even after a couple treatments, they canceled their surgeries. They didn't need it because they were better. I mean, their pain levels, let's say the pain level was gone. They couldn't function for months and months, 8 months at a time. And then 2 treatments, they're like, I don't need a surgery. I'm fine. So this is a very powerful tool.
Yeah. Holy crap. Can you just buy that as a regular person and just have it?
Yeah. This company, I'll put the website. I'll give you the website. It's DinosPainReliefStore.com. It's kind of an interesting. This is kind of an interesting. This device is only $600 too. By the way, it's pretty reasonable price. The Vertebra, which is the other one I showed you, this guy right here, that's the same company. And instead of one of these electrodes, it's got 48 of them, okay? So when you lay on that thing, it stimulates your entire spine and nervous system in different patterns. And it also has biofeedback functions to find where blockages are in the spine, and it corrects it. It goes after exactly where the blockage is. That machine is a badass machine. Love that machine. So yeah, that's a good technology. Russians have good stuff. Now,
I feel like if I came to your house for a weekend, I would just like activate the spirit body and just kind of float just like right off the planet or something. It seems like Star Trek technology.
Yeah, it is. I think it is actually Star Trek. I was raised on Star Trek. I'm a child of the 60s. I watched every episode of Star Trek, from the very original Star Trek to the new one they had, and all the movies. And I've been to, I haven't gone to Star Trek conventions, but I would pretty much say I'm a Trekkie.
Dude, I'm just getting into it. They're so fantastic, and especially for the times they're made. The older ones were better, but without seeing this stuff in 2000s, we're seeing this to imagine all this stuff which didn't even exist yet, and now a lot of it is starting to come to fruition. And even just the stories of humanity, how we treat each other, and then if we are going to go into galactic politics, and we can go to the stars, figuring out gravity and magnetism and shooting to the stars is not that far away. If I bring up the concept of, we went to the moon 1969. I looked it up. I thought it was 70s, like 69 we went to the moon. We are going to go to the stars, whether it's 100 years, 200 years, 300 years. It's happening. Like, it has to happen. So, we are in for some interesting times.
I think that we aren't being informed of what's really happening is what I think. I think it's already happening now.
Yeah, totally. You and I are definitely on that same page. It's hard, even going to Egypt and getting all the information. If I say anything about, well, people who listen to the podcast are totally fine with it, but, there's a lot of evidence that there's a lot going on already, and it takes some digging, but it also takes a lot of your natural conditioning, right? Because we weren't really told the right story, and it just takes a little bit of digging. Like, a simple thing is, how come we need to research food to know that we're not eating real food, like you said? If you can't read it, we're getting substitute food for crap's sake, that's a pretty telling thing, So there's there's a lot of space for learning.
Yeah. So then getting back to magnets. So I don't have that device here because it's in my office, but there's a technology I've been using for years and years and years, like since 2000, I think. I got introduced to it. It's called PEMF, Pulsed Electromagnetic Field Therapy. Okay, similar to what you were saying with your friend. And I think you even had that device, so something like that. It was a toroidal. But I worked with devices from Europe because actually Europe is where they did all the research. They've been doing research on PEMF in Europe for over 50 years now. And pretty much there's nothing you can't heal with PEMF. I mean, it's pretty profound science. It's science. This is not woo-woo. You can go into the literature and read the research, 50 years of research, okay? It is not woo-woo. People would say, oh, it's woo. No, it's not. Just because we don't do the research in this country doesn't mean it's not valid. That's the thing. Like, people like the America has some kind of thing on research. We don't. Most of the best research is done outside of this country. In Hungary and in Germany and Russia, they do they're not restricted. They don't have the restrictions that we have. So, the PEMF, basically what it is putting a magnetic field through the body, and there's different ways of applying it. The most common way is through a mat, just like your name, Matt. And you lay on it, and it's basically has coils, kind of like coils, like what you were showing me that night. So there's copper coils, and there's usually pairs of them. Like, there could be like 4 pairs of coils, embedded inside of a mat. And then it has a control unit that generates a electrical field or electrical current through the coil, and then that coil then produces a magnetic field. Okay, so and then there's usually a pulse related to it, and a pulse form, and a pulse width, and a pulse density, and then also frequencies, and so it gets kind of complicated and sophisticated. But the bottom line is you're producing a field, a magnetic field that goes through the body. Okay, and so you can use a regular magnet. There's arguments for both. People use just regular magnets and sleep on them, and they get benefit. And then you have people using the PEMFs that I think the PEMFs are more actively regenerating the body. I've been using for years. They're miraculous. That's all I can say. I mean, they did a whole story on, Dr. Oz did a whole story on PEMF for back pain and different conditions. And pretty much, I mean, let's just put it this way: the whole thing in this country with the opioid addiction problem could be ended overnight with PEMF. Overnight. That's how good it is. You know, I don't want to. I don't want to make medical claims, but my daughter was in a real serious accident a few years ago where she had to have her jaw reconstructed from a fall, and it was pretty serious. Like, she was in surgery for 8 hours. Like, they totally reconstructed her jaw. They told her that she wouldn't be able to do any contact sports for a year afterwards till the bones healed. And I brought her a PEMF mat, which she used continually for 3 months, slept on it. And she went back to her surgeon, and he told her, he said, listen, he looked at the x-rays. He's like, you're clear. You can go back now to doing whatever you want. 3 months. They originally told her 1 year. You know, so it speeds up the healing process for sure. You know, treating all kinds of things. It almost doesn't matter what it is, because it helps the body regenerate. When you add in a magnetic field, the body starts regenerating itself. They've done experiments with plants, you know, ones that get exposed. The plants literally grow twice as high, the ones that get exposed to a magnetic field. And same thing with the electrical too. By the way, the Dinos units also stimulate biological growth and repair. I've seen that with patients who've had discs, you know, herniated discs. They said, you know, they're never going to get better, and they're totally getting better. You know, they're reversing. It actually reverses the damage. So yeah, so PEMF is a really powerful tool that I've been using. It's a staple. It's really a staple of what I do. It also reverses osteoporosis too. It builds the bone. It's a bone regrower. So, I mean, I think every household in the country, you know, and I think with mass production of those things, the price could come way down where literally every household in the whole country could have a unit. It's not that technically difficult to make one of these things. They're pretty simple technology. And then the other thing that I have in my office, which is a form of a PEMF unit, is called the biocharger, which is using a Tesla coil along with Rife technology. So I don't know if are you familiar with Rife? Do you know about Rife technology? Have you heard of it?
I've heard about it many times, but I'm definitely going to need the upgrade, the update. Forget.
Okay. Okay. Well, so Rife was a scientist that lived in the 20s. He was funded by some of the biggest institutions at that time. I think USC, which is a big college here in LA, actually was funding his research. And what he was doing is he was taking frequencies that he would emit from, at that time they used these glass bulbs that would emit radio frequency. Okay. And so he would tune the frequency under a microscope. He'd look at different pathogens, viruses, bacteria, and he would find the right frequency where he would see the pathogens literally just blow apart. Just like you can blow up a crystal if you hit the right note. Singing, like an opera singer can blow up a crystal glass and they could shatter it with resonance. So the Rife technology, that's kind of the basis of that, is that you're using resonance to shatter pathogens like viruses, bacteria, parasites. But also, he also found there were certain frequencies that would stimulate healing in the body as well. So there was, frequencies for the organs, frequencies for the eyes, any part of the body. You find a frequency and you tune it, and then it stimulates the body to regrow that area of the body or heal it. And so that machine, the biocharger, incorporates that technology of Rife, and it incorporates Tesla, the Tesla coil, which is a wrapped coil, and it emits a very, very powerful PEMF field. It's a pulse magnetic field as well as an electric field. So you're getting not only are you getting the frequency, you're getting the magnetics, and you're getting the voltage. So when you sit in front of this thing, it actually is pushing 700,000 volts of electricity through the body. And according to the research done by NASA, is that when you pulse or emit over 200,000 volts through biologic or animals or humans or whatever, it will stimulate stem cells. Okay. So it's a form of stem cell regeneration is basically what it's doing. It's like doing stem cell therapy without having to do an injection and pull out the stem cells. It's actually stimulating your body's own stem cells to heal itself. So they've done things like where they've had people who've had torn ligaments, who've sat in front of that thing, daily for a month, let's say. So one guy was he tore his ligaments in his ankle, and he actually was scheduled to have surgery because it was a complete tear. He had totally severed the ligament, and he did the biocharger for a month. And after 1 month, they MRI'd his ligament. It regrew. It was new. He had new ligament. New ligament. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty awesome.
How does this thing work? Can you buy a device? Is it like, what does it look like exactly?
Well, it looks like I'll put a link to it, but it looks like a giant, it's going to say funny, but it looks like a giant blender when you look at it. It's a big cone thing. It's probably about 3 feet high and about 2 feet wide. And it has this coil that goes up the center. And then around the coil, there's tubes that emit the Rife frequency. So the voltage gets generated by the Tesla coil, and then the tubes light up the voltage, and they emit the frequency. So you're getting the Rife frequency along with the voltage. So that's like freaking. I love that machine. I love it. In Europe, wow. They're using it. Rife. The thing about Rife and his downfall is that he was curing people. He had large numbers of people that were doing experiments with who had cancer, tumors, and they were using these frequencies to literally blow up using the resonant frequency of the cancer. They're able to, shrink the tumors using non-ionizing radiation, not X-ray, but frequency. And so what happened is, the drug companies, the companies that were bringing out chemo, because chemo was coming out in the 30s. That's when it first started coming out in the hospitals. And the drug companies had a huge vested interest in that as a huge mega business, which it is still today. So Rife's technology was basically, challenging the status quo on the medical profession. And so they literally burned down his lab, and they discredited him. And then, so all of his research, everything kind of went underground for, I think, about the 40 years. No one knew about it. And then I think in the 70s, some people unearthed the actual notes and the information, and he had given it to certain people, and they kept it going, but underground. And then it came out in the 80s and 90s. That's when I learned about it. There was a book written about his life. I think it came out in the late 80s, and I read that book, and I was like, wow. I mean, just like, wow. People are, and it's totally suppressed. They suppressed it for 40 years, and then it came out. Now the cat's out of the bag, and in Europe, they're actually using it. Hey. Are you there? We're back? Are we back?
Yeah, we're back on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
That, problem. Part of the problem is my phone. Someone's calling me, and then I have to hang them. I have to hang them up. But anyway, so what happened is that technology is now being used in I believe in Sweden. There's a guy who's got the biocharger, and he's treated a whole slew of cancer patients with it and has had great success. So yeah, that technology's out. The cat's out of the bag now.
Well, there's no
Which is
money in
cool.
there's no money in healing and health, right? And pharmaceuticals and healthcare is what is it, trillion? I don't even, if they maybe need their own word for how big it is, or there's probably a number bigger than trillion. Someone could just educate me. But it's massive.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and you know, this kind. I don't want to say bad things about our country. I don't even think it's our country. I think it's more the multinational corporations that run the country, because it's really not the people that the people that are in positions of power. They're bought and paid for by these multinational corporations, but it's really the multinational corporations that set the agenda of what's going to be promoted and what the status quo is for the general population. I have a friend who calls them humunky. They used to call them sheeple. Now they call them humunky. Like a human and a monkey. Anyway.
Man, brother, this has been so fascinating, because your website, one of them, what is it called? You have a lot of these technologies listed, and I'm going to make sure that everyone that you shared, there's going to be a link. People can check it out, because there's people out there who are seriously in pain. There's people out there who have cancer, and I know personally that I've met in my life, well, 10 people quickly come to mind, at least, that have cured themselves of cancer through either proper diet. That's one, right? You're going to die, so they go straight to a proper diet. Then there's some sort of meditative practice, right? And so, you're supposed to just die. It's not supposed to be curable, right? And so, there are new technologies, and you just have to look. But the scary thing is, I remember reading this article, or as a TED Talk or a video or something, but this guy had got cancer and he had heard about all these alternative technologies. But when you actually have the disease and your life is on the line, that is frightening. And you want to go to the institution that has the most credibility. And the challenge is that we have other things that make sense, and maybe our established institutions need to start incorporating these things, or like you said at the beginning, it's taking responsibility for your own health. But when your life is on the line, it becomes frightening. But to me, clean diet and understanding food, like you said, is number one. If you're not eating actual food, you're poisoning your body. Two, the mind has the ability to heal the body, full stop. The body is infinitely intelligent and it can heal itself. And now we have Star Trek magnetic technology that's coming out. One of the things that I'll say a lot is Team Earth when I'm hashtagging on Instagram or whatever. Can you just imagine if Team USA teamed up with Team Russia, Team Korea, China, India, Canada, Europe, everybody, all the leading science, and we worked together, and collaborated for the health and well-being of all, how quickly we would eradicate probably all disease off the planet, famine, all this stuff. And so if that is not happening, which was always just astounded me as a kid when I was young and didn't understand, why is this not happening? And then they feed you a story about separate countries and money and this and that. And I was like, no, man, you just don't understand that the world is still run by kings and queens and money, because this makes no sense at all. There's something that is not right. But now we're at a point in time where we can take our own sovereignty and find the information, find the technologies, liberate ourselves from these mental, physical, spiritual, emotional shackles that have been given to us as reality, and learn. And so if we can take that responsibility seriously, we now have the ability to upgrade our consciousness, upgrade our life, upgrade our health, and all that kind of stuff. And you're sharing these technologies that exist right now that you can go access right now. And they're outstanding and they work.
The thing is, it's really about what you're doing right now is educating and sharing, because we're not going to get this message through the mainstream media. They don't want this stuff out there, just like they don't want
No.
anything that's like this. I don't even want to talk about that thing in Vegas, but that's just another example of the mainstream media just blocking the truth, and this type of thing, these podcasts in YouTube. That's where I do all my research as best I can. And apparently, they're starting to block a lot of that stuff even on YouTube now from coming out. Anything that counters what the establishment wants you to hear, they're going to try to stop it as much as possible. So I mean, but the thing is the more that this message gets out there, that we have the power, we have what it takes. We don't need anything. We have it already. We got it. We got this. It's easy. It's just a matter of, okay, let's just break it down. I think it would be really, really good if we started our own institutions that train people in alternative healing. That's really what has to happen, because the institutions as they are now, they're not going to change. They're going to stay the same. But if we have an alternative to offer people, and people decide, hey, I don't want what you guys have, I want what these guys have. That's what happened to me. I figured that out 37 years ago. I was like, wait a minute, you guys, your shit doesn't work. This guy's shit works, and it was just easy, and I didn't even have to experience it that much. I mean, I knew, I could say almost the second I met this guy, this chiropractor, that it changed me. It just woke me up. Just meeting somebody who was already awake, So somebody just seeing this program is going to be enough that they're going to wake up. They're going to go, wow, I need to take care of business here, And I meet people on a regular basis who have had amazing transformations in their lives, and disease is a big wake up call for most people. And even for myself, I mean, I kind of appreciate it when I get sick, or if I get injured, or if I have a chronic problem. To me, that's like, okay, that's my next challenge, to figure out what's the next thing I need to learn about healing, that I can heal myself and then share it with others. So, like, that's kind of how I operate. I'm my own lab. I do all my own testing on me first before I let it out to the public. And, I try to vet as much as I can with scientific understanding and research, but ultimately, if it works for me, I'm going to share it with others, and I'm constantly looking. My mind is open. Like they say, what is there saying about a mind? Like a closed mind is an empty mind. I don't know what the saying is, but the bottom line is you've got to keep your eyes open and constantly search what's out there. It's like, what's out there, like a wild animal, like in the jungle. We're searching. What is there? What is there? We have to get back to that primal, instinct. It's an instinct. It's like we have to have that instinct to know when something's right, and that's kind of how I go with the healing. Is I follow my instinct and I listen. I would say more than half of the stuff that I have in my practice and in my life have come from my patients who teach me. I'm a student. I'm a perpetual student. I'm more a student now than I was when I was in school 30 years ago. I'm constantly studying. I never stop studying 24/7. I'm literally researching and studying 24/7. That's what I do. 24/7. So the latest, I want to tell you about the latest. Okay, you ready for this one?
Yeah, man. I'm ready.
Okay, this is okay. I'm going to tell you some stuff this is gonna actually be the most important thing I tell you right now about this whole broadcast. Okay, and it's going to change the health well-being of every plant, animal, and human on the planet. What I'm going to tell you right now. It's going to change everything. Okay. There's something called C60. You know what it is? Have you heard of it? Okay. Get ready to have your brain blown out of your head. Okay. When I tell you this stuff. Okay. C60 is carbon. It's a carbon molecule. And it's in the shape of what they call fullerene. It's a buckyball, like Buckminster Fuller. You know, he had this the buck. What do they call that?
Yeah, he's got the buckyball. Yeah, the buckyball. Yeah,
the buckyball. So basically, what happened is, if you go back, you can read the research and the stories. But basically, what happened is that they were doing, these group of researchers in Europe were doing some experiments with C60. They use it as a lubricant in industry because I guess it's a very useful lubricant for engines and mechanical parts and things like that. And anyway, they were doing toxicity testing because that's part of the process of what they have to do when they, manufacture new things, right? So they were doing toxicity testing with the C60 on animals. And, with the thought, okay, we're going to give this animal a toxic dose and try to find out what is the toxic dose, right? So they gave these rats, what they thought would be a, lethal dose of C60. And what ended up happening was that the rats, it doubled their lifespan. In fact, not only did it double their lifespan, they had to kill the rats at the end of the experiment because they wouldn't die. Rats normally live 3 years. That's their life expectancy, right? So these rats were living 6 years, and they had to publish their study, and they were like, we got to kill these rats. So they ended up having to kill a rat before it even died. And it was already living twice as long as it was supposed to. So anyway, bottom line is that now this C60, some of the top research, and I'll send you a link. I just saw the video today of these two scientists that work they're former NASA scientists that have, between the two of them, 10 science degrees. These guys are like super geniuses, okay? They're doing their own research now with animals and humans. The effects that they are seeing are unbelievable. Reversing every disease with C60. Every disease. They had a dog, old dog, 10-year-old dog with cataracts, blind, like a blind dog, right? Started giving the C60. 70% of the lens is already cleared in just a matter of months. The mother of one of the researchers had dementia. And the reason he even got into this field of research was he knew about the C60. He had heard about it. And he literally dropped everything he was doing in his career. He went to see his mom. He made his own C60. He got the purest form of it. And I'll send you their link so you can read all about it. He started giving it to his mom, who's 92, or I guess at the time she was probably in her late 80s, but she had dementia. She was losing it. No memory. She was gone. She couldn't drive. She was like an invalid. They put her on the C60, and I think it took 90 days. She got full use of her brain back. She's now driving a car. She's fully functional at 92. It reversed her dementia. Reversed it. Full to reversal. Okay. So the deal is if you start taking C60 at our age, like 30, 40, 50s, they're saying now that humans could live 300 to 500 years on C60. 300 to 500 years.
Crap, man. Well, that's super fascinating, man. Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you, how do we start taking this stuff? My friend talked about TRT that's helping, but to go a little bit mystical with it, in the Bible they live up until 900, and I have heard, our natural lifespan is a few hundreds of years. And if from birth we weren't getting poisoned right away through food and water and every other toxicity that we're getting plugged into the body, that we would live for a lot longer than we have. So I've consistently, in my own research, I research a lot, but it seems like you research more, which I'm grateful to have the podcast, because I can kind of, even for the podcast, like I share these stories, but it's literally me doing the work that I would do on my own, right? I just get to share it with people, whether they accept it or like it, that's their own business. Like, this podcast is for me. I love it. But I get to share it. So it's for you too. It's like both, but I can learn from your wisdom. So it's the best, and we're all learning. But everything that I've seen in my own research has led me to, and this is just another confirmation, that we're supposed to live a lot longer. A lot of people are talking about immortality in the sense of maybe, I heard also immortality is the ability to not lose memory, taking memory through death. So that's another different spin on things. So if we could live to 300, 500 years in peace and prosperity, and then that would give us enough time to really develop our consciousness to a degree we can't even think about right now. So everybody is Yogi Bhajan and Ascended Masters. And
exactly, that's the thing. It's like, if your life gets cut short and you're working on yourself, most people don't even get a chance to ever work on themselves their whole life. And so if you have a life that can go for 300 to 500 years, you got a lot of things you can work on, and that's not even including this Wim Hof thing. I think in combination, the C60 and the Wim Hof, oh my God, I think we could live 1,000 years. I really do.
I think
I don't know.
I honestly think so too. Like, I don't know why. I just feel it, and I think it's totally fine. I don't see myself dying at 90 or 100. I only, like, when I picture myself 40, 50, 60, I just see myself as even more healthy than I am right now, because the technologies are coming. I'm going to educate through food, you know what I mean? And everything. And my body will be getting exactly what it needs, and everything will be upgraded. That's how I see it anyway. It could go any different way, but I totally resonate with that, and don't really have any doubt.
I mean, you look at it, every year we come out with new technology, and it's getting better and better and better. Why wouldn't it apply to us? It just makes total sense. Why don't we apply this knowledge and technology to ourselves? So, I mean, I'm excited. This C60 stuff, I have some here. I'll show it to you. I just got it. There's.
Are you going to be able to give us Are you going to be able to give us like an article or something of like where, because I want to figure out where I can get it, educate myself. How do I?
The podcast where the last one. So this is a bottle of it right here. This is it. It's called Carbon 60 olive oil. This is just one site. I'm not saying you should get it from these guys, but this is just what it looks like. It's olive oil. They mix the stuff with olive oil, and you take I think like a teaspoon a day. There's no toxic level. I could drink that whole bottle, and it's non-toxic. So but I guess normal dose is like a teaspoon a day, something like that. And yeah, so pretty excited about that.
Yeah,
I want to get that to everyone. I really did. I found, David Wolf talked about it a few years ago. He knew about it a few years ago. He talked about it, and he was just talking about charcoal, because that's where it comes from. It comes from charcoal. It's carbon, but this is highly, highly refined. And you couldn't just buy this in a store. You need to find somebody who's actually making it. It's not really been recognized yet, I don't think, as even a supplement. So, but it's pretty interesting what's going on with it. They're saying that also it gets. Yeah, go ahead.
No, keep going.
Oh, yeah. They're saying it actually helps with pain too. I haven't tried it yet, but they were saying people with severe pain, they've given it to, and within 24 hours, they're totally pain free. Wow. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was for me another one of those things is CBD oil that's just going in everything, and I just started looking into it and how necessary it is for all of us to be using that. You know,
Yeah.
again, I know a few people that have cured themselves of cancer. They were taking CBD, and if you're healthy, you know, you should be taking this supplement. You know, yeah, exactly. So, you know, I'm going to start adding that, and how important it
Yeah.
is for all of us just to be taking kind of like, I don't know, if we're only drinking water and then we figure out natural oranges or something gives us vitamin C, it's like absolutely essential. So uh the C60 seems like an upgrade on CBD. And then what would happen if we were ingesting that our whole lives, right? The CBD and everything else. So I'm looking into that a little bit to just because I want to upgrade my own consciousness and health and everything, and then exactly like you, just be the guinea pig. Oh, did I lose you?
Are you there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Are you? Yeah. Yeah. I got people calling me. That's what happened.
Well, you're popular. Well,
Anyway,
man,
yeah.
well,
Yes. Go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, man, it's been like you've properly blown my mind. And it was everything I could have hoped for and more. Just wanted to thank you for coming on the show and sharing everything that you did. I don't know if you have any more whopping nuggets that you want to leave us with before we close off, but let the listeners know where they can find out more about you, anything that you're up to, and just, you know, any closing thoughts and nuggets you want to leave us with.
Okay. Well, my website is transformationalhealinguniverse.com. They want to, we can put that in the notes. And then, as far as what I'm up to, I'm going to be doing a training, advanced training for like a Jedi healer training in Hawaii, I think the end of March, with my ayahuasca shaman. We didn't really talk much about ayahuasca. I'd like to talk. Let's just finish it with the ayahuasca.
Sure, brother. Well, hey, yeah, ayahuasca is always coming up on the show, man. It's out there. The
I
plant's
mean,
out there.
I mean, I did it for the first time about a year ago, and I'd known about it for many, many years because I had friends of mine who'd been doing it for a long time with the Santa Daime Church, and I never really felt called to do it. Then a friend of mine took me to a ceremony, and without really much preparation, I went in and he said, just meet the guy. I was a little bit scared. And he's like, just meet the guy. And I met the guy. And are you there? What happened? Let's see. Are you there?
Oh, there
Hello?
we go.
You there?
I
You
have
there?
a
Okay.
lamp set up, and it just fell down all of a sudden. Sorry,
Oh
keep
my
going.
God. That's the universe, man. Um, so I went to the ceremony and I really didn't know what to expect, but I really liked the guy. The shaman was a very amazing energy. And just being in his presence, I was like, oh my God, this guy's like a starship. I literally thought I was in the presence of a starship captain from Star Trek. That's literally his energy field. Like I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like, fuck. I was like, oh shit. I knew something bad was going to happen that night. Bad and good at the same time. And I did it. He gave me a massive, massive dose, two. And the second one, all hell broke loose. I mean, it was like World War III in my head, my stomach, and my spirit. Oh my God. Oh my God. It was it was transformational. Actually, I really think it was a big reason why I got into the Wim Hof, because the ayahuasca takes you to such a depth of your being that you just want to change. You just want to change after you go through something like that because it's such a, a soul uh, grinding experience. It takes your soul and literally like implodes it. It's like I can't even explain it. Like it's hard for me to explain it, but it takes you and and it literally, it feels like it was taking me and pushing me into like a black hole and literally spitting me out the other side. And it was like, oh my God. Forget about death. Forget about everything. I mean, this is beyond all of that, you know? I mean, it was crazy. But anyway, yeah, I think it's a good thing, but I scared the hell out of me, but I think the end result was good. The end result was good. But I think if people are thinking about doing ayahuasca, this is just my take on it, is that you need to have a very strong spiritual practice going in to the ceremony before you even do the ceremony, because I don't think I could have withstood the enormity of the psychic change of the. It was like, imagine like Hurricane Irma fucking going right through your body. Basically, it's like what it was. It was like a hurricane, like what the fuck. So yeah, you need to have some real good, solid spiritual practice before, during, and after that kind of experience, and you need support because it's super, super intense. I don't know if it's for everybody, but if you're ready for a big change, it really can propel people into another reality. That's for sure. And
Yeah,
I
brother.
eventually, yeah. Go ahead.
Oh,
What were you going to say?
I was just gonna say, I've experienced ayahuasca a bunch of times, and I think though that there's a difference with where you are in life and what
Yeah.
like all the work that you've done. It's given you all of that energy, and also
Yeah.
the shaman makes a massive difference. So, you know, there's like, oh, good, thank you for coming here. We know you're capable of handling this absolute game changing, holy smokes, because the thing about you is you're integrating it before you go in, so you have the capacity to hold that amount of energy, charge, and information, where somebody who might be coming out of addiction, or you know or they just depression or whatever, it's going to be transformational, but it'll be transformational a whole different way. Do you know what I mean? And so they've transformed out of this addiction.
Yeah. No, I totally get that, and I think I think it has, in the right hands, it's a very powerful tool. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Because
yep.
I hear me. Okay, yeah, and also, even I started experimenting too with psilocybin. Um, and I think that's also a very useful thing too for people who are suffering, with depression. The latest studies on psilocybin are showing that it can literally, just one heroic dose of psilocybin can eradicate severe depression.
Yep.
Can you hear
Yeah.
me? Yeah.
Yep.
Are you familiar with those studies?
Yeah, Maps is doing some really great work. They're also showing with, MDMA, and that's why, some of the things that I'll mention on the podcast is I would love to see a conscious rebirth of shamanism, of guides. Like you go to a coach or a healer, somebody who's familiar with those realms, and maybe it's like a weekend and you have a small group of people who are consciously doing psychedelics, consciously doing MDMA, because they're not being used responsibly or for what they're for. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like take a whole bunch of mushrooms and go backwards, go into your mind, right? But we're
Yeah.
using them as out, and it's so interesting how people are so willing to drink all the time and drink on the weekends, and this is like, oh, I don't do drugs, and that's like, you don't know what they are, and you're doing them because but they don't have the container. Culturally we don't have that container. To experience these things as actual healing tools of what they are. And so if we had enough consciousness around how to use them responsibly, enough guides, then they could be reintroduced culturally and do some really profound healing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I
So
totally
that's it.
agree. I think I think these things have the capacity to totally change healthcare, how it's administered, with compassion and consciousness. I mean, it's just not done that. It's just not done that way here. There's a lack of compassion, a lack of consciousness, and really a lack of life. I mean, anything that doesn't have life in it or doesn't come from the earth, how could you call it medicine? I mean, it's not medicine. It's garbage.
Totally, man. Yep, I'm with you.
Mean, people need to get. You know, I haven't gone. I mean, no offense against any medical doctors or anything like that, but I have not gone to a medical doctor in 37 years. So, and I'm healthy, very healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
I have nothing against medical doctors. An evolved medical doctor like Jack Cruz, somebody who's went through their own healing process and understands true healing, I'll go to that medical doctor. You know what I mean? Before I go to some guy who's just straight out of medical school and doesn't know his head from a hole in the wall. Anyway, yeah, it was great talking to you, Matt. I'd love to talk to you more too. I mean, there's more stuff coming.
I know, yeah, totally. Well, you know, as you and I are definitely going to stay connected. I'm going to see how much of your field of technologies and healings I can incorporate and afford into my life, and just get more and more as we go. But yeah, I'm so excited to stay in touch, and thanks for everything you're sharing. And you can give me the updates when these new breakthroughs come on, and I'll have you back on the show, and we'll share these things. I know that some of my listeners are going to be reaching out because they might know somebody with a terminal illness or really chronic disease, and they might want your opinion on what the heck do I do? Nothing's working. And that's when you come into these things, because there's nothing that's working. And so you got to keep trying. Right. And so, you know, maybe we can steer them in the right direction. But thank you for
Totally, man. Totally.
Your work and who you are, and you have a hilarious delivery, man. I just love it. The first podcast where the beard is even more epic than mine. So, you know, I got to congratulate you on that. It's looking so good. But thank you, brother. Anything you want to leave the listeners with before we go?
You know, there was one other thing that I'm currently working with. You probably know about it. Is the Rick Simpson oil? Are you familiar with that stuff?
No.
You're not? Oh my
No.
God! You live in Canada.
Yes, I'm out of the loop.
Dude, Rick Simpson is from Nova Scotia. He's a Canadian.
Okay.
Okay, you gotta do some deep research into Rick Simpson. I gotta tell you, that guy is he is one of the top people on the planet right now helping people with cancer, and his method. Okay, it's very, very powerful. Not just cancer, but a whole slew of diseases. Yeah, you just need to check it out. I don't even want to get into the whole thing of it right now, but when you research it, you will interview. I want to watch your interview of Rick Simpson, because he does this. You'll get him. You'll get him. Just contact him, because that guy, he will seriously blow your mind. Seriously.
Yes, I'm down. Awesome.
Yeah, and his message needs to get out to as many people as possible. You know, and I don't want to do it on this show, but I mean, I would say that should be your goal, is to get him and Jack Cruz on your show. Both of those guys.
Done. Yeah. I'll get him.
Yeah.
I'll get him.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
And
if
you have a direct connection to him, let me know, you know, but I'll reach out and I'll get it. I can do the pester mode. I'll request once and then I'll request again. That's what I can do.
Okay. Great. Well, it's nice talking to you. Have a great one, man.
Yeah, you too, brother. Have a great day. Thanks everybody for listening.
Okay.
Peace.
Take care.